Hi everyone, this is Mick Stott from the Guardians 300, Keeping the Peace. Just wanted to do a short video as a bit of a riposte, really, and a riposte with regard to the gentleman from the Guardian newspaper that contacted me, the guy called Ben Quinn. I call him a gentleman, but actually he doesn't behave like one, to be fair. And what I wanted to do is just to show you how manipulative some of these people really are, because they don't realize actually that the job of a reporter comes with a lot of responsibility, because you're either informing people around where they're going, or you're misinforming people. And of course, Ben is a bit of a manipulator of people naturally, because you grow into things, don't you? And the best sort of predictor for future behaviour is how you behaved in the past. So clearly, from being very young, he's learned to manipulate people and manipulate conversations. As you can see factually when we go through this, because what he reported is completely misrepresentative of the conversation that we had. So to do this, I'm going to share my screen with you in a moment, and I'm going to show you some of the stuff that Ben reported on, because what he actually said was that there were people within the Guardians 300 that were making some sort of death threat or some threat towards the likes of Chris Whitty and some of the ministers, and that in reality this wasn't really fair. Well, I'm a great believer that the meaning of your communication is the response you get, and we would never incite violence, but equally you can't do some of the things that the government are doing and not expect for people to, one, be confused, two, be completely embracing of what you do, because what you do is confusing. So let me just share my screen and then we'll take it from there. So I received an email from Ben, and I actually received the email after he'd done the interview, which I don't think was by chance. But what he did was he put three images from the Guardians 300 that you can see here, to which he referred to. The thing is, we could read through his email, but it's quite lengthy. I don't think there's any need to do that. But the pertinent bits are, that it's in relation to our coverage of concerns about security of prominent public servants, such as Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty. As you may be aware, anti-lockdown activists protested recently outside an address which they believe to be his home. Well, I don't quite know what they expect, because in reality, riots are the domain of the unheard, and he hasn't actually been injured yet. If you look at the show that they put up of him being cajoled by those three people that look like East Europeans, I don't think that was by chance, and that was a completely put up job. Anyone that can calibrate people, and bear in mind that I'm a master trainer of neuro-linguistic programming, and calibration is one of the first things you learn. So if you actually calibrate Chris Whitty's face when he is being supposedly molested by these people, for me, those aren't the calibrations that I would expect to see someone that's scared. And then if you actually look at the footage and you see the police fans in the background, it does beg a question why he didn't go over and ask the police to aid him. So that was just a complete farce as far as I'm concerned. But of course, what do I know? I'm a conspiracy theorist. And then he goes on to say, I understand that the threats have been made by members of the Guardians 300 Telegram discussion group, of which I understand you to be an administrator, to commit violence against or kill Mr. Whitty and others. Well, I'm going to show you those three posts that he referred to. And I want you to remember that people don't actually work on truth. There's no such thing as truth, because we all have our own unique perception and our perspective of things. We measure everyone else's behaviors through our own belief filters. So essentially that pretty much colors everything that we experience, and it's very much a personal thing. So when somebody makes an accusation like this, it then turns into a fact-finding mission. So you're going to say, well, where's the evidence for that? What does it actually say in this particular piece of text that they are going to create physical harm individually to that person? And I think as we go through these, you'll find the information that Ben sends wanting, essentially. So if people work on plausibility, they don't work on fact. All Ben has to do is suggest that this is plausible, and people that really want to believe him are going to naturally believe him anyway. So, but equally, that is in the absence of fact. So let's take a look at the first post that we see, and I can make this even bigger. This is simply from one of the girls on the group, and all she simply puts is a link to the dailyexpose.co.uk. That's all she does. And make that even bigger, as you can see, or we can single it out. But essentially, this is what she put. Chris Whitty gave the order to give alleged COVID-19 patients lethal doses of hydroxychloroquine to both kill them and sabotage trials. Now, she puts a link to a reference of who says so. So that's not her personal link. That is just something that she's reposted. I don't see how that is a personal threat to Chris Whitty, unless somebody can educate me. But I just really can't see that factually. And one of the things when I train coaches, I teach them how to get out of the world of imagination and how to measure fact. By learning how to calibrate, by learning how to measure individual facts. So that's the first one, which really just doesn't make any sense to me. If I look at another one that's on here, it simply says that treason still carries a penalty of death. Well, in a common law court, which is the court where we are looking at, and you can see here that this is what it says: treason still carries a penalty of death, I believe. And in common law court situations, if you're tried by 12 good and true people, certainly your peers, then the fact of the matter is they might ask for that to be the outcome, but they might not. And so I still fail to see where that is a direct threat to Chris Whitty. And also, if we look at the one underneath, where it says the time will come when UK police, UK military, and UK military veterans will have to decide whether their oath is to the UK people or the monarch establishment. I know my oath as a military veteran is to my country, the UK, and its people, no one else. Well, I mean, that's just a simple fact. And equally, that's his perspective. So I can't find yet anything that tells me that they are directly threatening Chris Whitty. So let's take a look at the third one, because it might be that we're missing the point here, that there's something that we're going to find out. But even if we look at the third one now, so the third one here that he refers to, someone says, I don't want to exchange Whitty for whatever. And then the reply to that is, you say revenge, I say justification for crimes against humanity. The gallows for this cook. Well, in reality, if he was found guilty in a common law court, as we said, and there's every chance that he might end up in one. And by the way, common law courts simply refer to the oldest laws of our land. I mean, they're still extant today. They underpin the whole system of law. So that it's not like anything off the wall is actually being quoted. So I'm trying to work out what Ben meant by that, outside of if he suggests that and people work on plausibility and that seems plausible to them, then naturally they're going to be okay with that. They're likely to believe it. When he posted his article in The Guardian, he just coincidentally happened to start to talk about right-wing organisations. Now, I find that really interesting because I served for 30 years in the British Army. I worked at some of the most prestigious academies throughout the British Army. I was vetted at top secret level. And so from my perspective, I'm not quite sure how I would ever have served at any of those organisations, having been vetted to get those jobs, if I had any right-wing connections whatsoever. And it's highly unlikely, if the predictor for future behaviour is past behaviour, then I'm never going to support any of those organisations anyway. But of course, Ben goes into the world of his imagination. He has no real moral compass, and he hasn't got the moral courage to speak the truth. So any story will do as long as it makes him look good in the eyes of his editor, no doubt. And of course, when you're young and insecure and you really don't understand the potential of what you do, then these are the types of things that those people do. So he starts to quote, things with regards to the UK column. And I had a conversation with the UK column and was quite horrified as we started to talk about the current situation. And what Ben did, he did a classic little way of taking something out of context. Now, I don't know if you know this or if you get this, but A behavior only has meaning when you see it within a context. So, for instance, if I'm a soldier and I'm on operations, I could walk down the street carrying a 5.56 millimeter rifle, and that behavior would be acceptable in that context. But if you then ship me out of an operational environment, you put me in the middle of Tesco's, and I'm walking through Tesco's with a 5.56 millimeter rifle, that behavior has a different meaning in that context. Well, what Ben aptly does, and what a lot of reporters are renowned for doing, is they're renowned for shifting the context. So when I was talking about there might be victims, well, I consider the fact that people have not been allowed to get diagnosed for any illnesses that they have. I mean, I think the numbers of those expected to die just from cancer at the moment goes into the hundreds of thousands, even more than have died from COVID, because at the moment, the only deaths that are important, it appears, are COVID deaths. And we know that all of those have been skewed. You know, chatting to Mark Oakford, looking at 1,300 freedom of information requests, totally convinced me that what we were being told by the government was not a true reflection of what was actually happening on the ground. And so, for me, those are victims. This is part of the collateral damage. And if you look at DNAR, do not resuscitate, even some people that were close to us were placed on that. And if you look at the King's College, the hospital study, 61% of the people didn't even get to ICU because of forced DNAR, which I believe there is an ongoing investigation into that as we speak. And of course, these are all victims of what's gone on. So by Ben literally misquoting me, what it makes it sound like is that if we're creating this force to counteract against a force, there's got to be victims. And what he then tried to do was suggest that equaled there's going to be some sort of interaction between these two. Well, you're absolutely misguided, Ben. And this message is for you, because you should really understand that you do have a responsibility, and that you should grow up in your job, because ultimately your job truly is to represent both halves of any story, so that the people out there can make an intelligent decision based on the presentation of information. That, for me, is what a journalist should stand for. However, that doesn't necessarily sell newspapers or entertain the masses. But it's not good enough for Ben to have his own nonsense of a story. What he also has to do is he has to put us in the same column as somebody like Tommy Robinson. I've never met Tommy Robinson. I have no affiliation to him at all. I don't even really know what he stands for, because I've only ever heard the mainstream media report on him. And certainly with my recent experience of this, if that's how they report on people, then we wouldn't really know who Tommy Robinson was anyway, because they can make the villains look like good guys and the good guys look like villains. And as Malcolm X said, that's a very, very powerful system. So from my perspective, Ben, if I was to give you a little bit of advice, it would be just to tell the truth, mate. Instead of having a line of custard down your back, why don't you grow a spine? And why don't you start doing what some of the investigative journalists used to do, which is to look for both halves of a situation and present both halves equally. I don't think you're ever likely to do that, because it does take a little bit of maturity and maturation for you to understand the implications of what you write and the full consequences. And not everyone has the nous to record the conversations that you have, like I did. But no surprises that when you represented us in the same column as Tommy, that by the nature of the way people think is that you're then guilty by association. And then when you start to talk about right wing as a pre-frame, and then suggest that we might be suggesting that 77 Brigade, our own military psyops, might be working against us, that just makes us sort of sound like we're ridiculous, really, on some levels. But that's your world, and you're entitled to that. Remember, you get the benefits of what you do in life, and you pay the price. And at some point, you will answer to someone. I have no doubt about that. Because equally, you know, a lot of these guys forget that when this is all over, and this will be over. When this is over, those people will be held accountable, because everything is there. They've been told. There's no denying what they've done at that point, and ignorance will be no excuse. So, Ben, as much as I'd like to wish you well, I can't really say that you fall into that category at the moment. I just wish you'd grow up and tell the truth, mate. and understand the consequences of what you do. But I've said that a number of times now, so you can see that I'm sort of pretty passionate about that. I also wish that there'd be more reporters out there, more people that really do know that they're being held back and they're being restricted by their editors. I wish more people would come to the fore, because we are certainly told an awful lot of things, and we are confided in by lots of different people, and just too scared to put their heads above the parapet because they know that they're going to get lopped off if they do that. They're going to lose jobs. They won't be able to feed families. And I can get my head around that. So this is my, if you like, and it's almost a rebuttal to what Ben had to offer. But the main purpose of this is showing you just how the mainstream media lie to either sell a story, reinforce something that they've been told to reinforce, when in reality there's absolutely no evidence that underpins it.